Well, all of my classes are organized the same, and I will say if you're going to teach multiple courses and students are going to be taking you for multiple courses, they do appreciate it if your courses look pretty similar so they don't have to kind of relearn the whole system. But I organize mine by units, and then within each unit it would be by week. So they basically know. And I found over the years that if you have something due like the same day every week, it keeps the students on task. So every single Friday, I will have something due in all of my online courses, be it a quiz, an assignment, a discussion post, whatever. There might be multiple things due, but it's always due on a Friday, and they know that it happens to be due on that Friday. So it's by unit, and then it's by week for me.
Right, I do it by the same way, by unit. And when they go into a unit, it opens up a series of things to do inside of it that culminates in a paper, an essay at the end. So, and each of the units are that way. My horror film class is organized a little differently, though. It's organized as like a fun house. So each of the places are like going into haunted locations, and it does not do it in a linear fashion like that.
Mine is different from both of yours. Mine is basically grouping all the things that they need to do in one area together. So there's one folder that is for important documents where I house all of my syllabi, deadlines, schedules, all of the stuff that they need to know for the course. The next one would be assignments, where all their assignments and directions and rubrics are. The next one is for Dropboxes, where all of their Dropboxes are, all of their discussions in a different one. So they know exactly which one they have to go into, but the first thing I tell them to do is to read the important documents. And the schedule is basically weekly. So they know exactly what they need to do, but it's very easy to not get lost because everything is labeled the way it should be and everything is grouped together. So I've often heard students say this is so nicely organized. Of course, there's always somebody that gets lost, but that's a typical thing.
Yeah, and using the calendar too is a useful thing as well.
I use the calendar. I also use the announcement. And on the announcement, I'll actually say this assignment is found in Unit 1 or Unit 2, and so just to remind them.
Right. Well, I do that with announcements, and I'll embed the actual Dropbox right in the announcements, too.
Okay.
I think, you can't be redundant enough in that sense. So when you're writing some direction that says, I need you to turn this form, and I usually put in between brackets, form can be found here, here.
Yeah, placing your data in a number of places is a good idea. But when it comes to revising your class the next semester, you got to remember where everything was, so you change it.
Of course, you will have the odd student who's like, yeah, I get it. You repeated it 5 times. But for most students, the 5 times were necessary because they got it on the 5th.
Yep.
But you did bring up a good point when you put all those announcements and everything in different places and you go to revise it. If you miss the date for one of them, there will always be a student that will call you out and say, but I thought the assignment was due on this day instead of this day. And it's like, okay, 1 out of the 5 places I remind you when the assignment's due, it has the wrong date on, and you pick that one.
That's how you have to be mega organized.
Yes.
And if you can manage to copy your course forward to a different course, that always works. Map them to the objectives. I mean, I think you have to design the course backwards. You have to start with the goals in mind and say, how is this goal going to be assessed? How is that even something that you can assess? And then you work backwards from it. I think that a lot of people, when they start teaching, they have all of these amazing ideas of things they want to do. But then when you start asking yourself, what purpose does this actually serve when it comes to the teaching, that's when you get a little bit more into trouble. So it's the design backwards that works best.
Right. I mean, you go through what your objectives, your goals are, and then just look at what assignments work to satisfy those things. Not just the major papers, but all the stuff that you're doing to prepare for the major paper or for the major work that you're doing.
Yeah, and unlike a face-to-face class, I think when you teach online, especially when you do the revisions, you really start thinking about, why am I making these students do this assignment? Because I know all of us occasionally, when we're doing a class face-to-face, we might think, oh, this is a great assignment. Let's do this, and then it's a fun thing to do. The students are going to like it, and then you don't really think about, is it actually pertinent to the class? Is it meeting any goals? But when you start to each semester revise your online course and you start looking at all those assignments, you kind of reflect yourself, like, why did I make these students do this assignment? What did they get out of it?
Yeah.
Well, how can I make it better?
Right, and since there's limited time anyway, am I making them do something that's taking time away from something else? Even
And,
though
yeah.
online we seem open-ended.
Because they want, I mean, if there is a reason they're taking that class, it has to do with jobs, kids, etc. So you feel like you don't want to compromise more of their time. But also what I tend to do is on each of the assignments, I put a rationale why we're doing this. And I think that if anybody has a question of that sort, why are we doing this? So it doesn't seem like busy work, they get that up front.
Right, and often that is like a reiteration of your objectives back in the assignment, saying, this is what we're doing.
So I don't think they read the objectives in the course. They just maybe assume that you know what you're doing and that there's a reason why you're doing that. But I like to give them, for that student that might have the question, this is why we're doing it.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I've worked into my courses just recently is for each of the units, I have an objective page.
Oh, that's nice.
That sort of lays out, here's what this unit's going to do. And it's sort of what I've done is I go to the assignment that they're going to ultimately do and unpack that towards the front so that they kind of like, so it kind of mirrors each other and repeats itself.
That's my next revision, units. Always working towards the next thing.
Yeah. Always got to be ready to add stuff. Well, that comes to me back to using discussion. I mean, I use discussion as a way to guide them into the materials and to get them to probe those things that are maybe in a PowerPoint. I use a few of them still, or a lecture aspect that's written up, or some videos. To engage with the material is having them use it. So I'll say, okay, 180-degree rule, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's what it is. Go out and find something that illustrates it and show us how it works. And then if they can bring in those, and I use a lot of exemplars from students as well, so that helps them too, to engage with the subject matter in a cognitive way.
I think it's about application for me. I don't believe in testing as the main way of trying to check whether they are cognitively engaged, because it seems more like regurgitation, and I'm scared that they're just reading to fulfill the exam. And I don't do exams online or in face-to-face classes, but I know that they're reading and that they're engaged because they cannot do the assignments that I design if they haven't read. So I think it's all about the design of the assignments so that you make sure that they're actually engaging with the material. You have to remember that in class, when they're sitting there, at the very least, they're listening to you if you're lecturing or if you're doing an in-class assignment. But online, you have to rely on the fact that they're going to read the book or they're going to look through the PowerPoints, the Prezis, etc. So you really have to be careful in your design that you're asking them to show you the application of what they're learning and not just being able to look something up, copy and paste it. And I think that it's mostly in design.
And like I mentioned before, I use those reflections, and I can tell very quickly with the student who, like you mentioned, just basically copied and pasted and really didn't understand what was going on, and then the student who actually took the time and actually thought about what they were writing and what they were learning. I also use some case studies to try to.
Oh, those are great.
Yeah, I mean, because they have to read the textbook, and I'm making the assumption that they're reading the textbook, and then instead of just always doing the multiple choice test or the short essay test, give them a case study to see if they can actually take that information and apply it to something. In my case, I teach a lot of science courses, so there's tons of case studies out there to see if they actually can understand what they were learning.
Yeah.
And it actually links it to real life, which is the other side of being cognitively engaged. Is this relevant?
Yes.
And if it's relevant to their lives, if you can make it relevant to what's going on in their lives right now or what's going to happen at work when they graduate, etc., I think that they have no other choice but engage. So a lot of the things that I ask them to do is think about how this fits in the larger world.
Yeah.
No, I think the application aspect is dead on. It's a very important thing. And when I go through a particular strategy, for instance, like let's say, or an aspect of cinema, like editing, I mean, I don't want them to regurgitate the lecture or the notes saying, here's what a graphic relation is, and walk through that. I give them a list of more recent texts, films, and I try to update those to keep them relevant to them. and make it easier for them to find them as well. But I asked them they've got to analyze the film and find those examples, because anybody can read the notes and tell me what a graphic match is. Okay? Find it, okay, and show me how it works in Casino Royale or in any of the films I put on there.